Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Sales Leadership Awakening podcast. I'm Colleen Stanley with my co-host, Stephen Rosen, and together we are tackling the age-old issue of bridging the knowing and doing gap in sales leadership. Now, Stephen, I feel like we are just on this roll because we keep having incredible guests. And I'm not just saying that. Anybody following our podcast would shake a loud yes with their head here. So please introduce our guest today.
Well, it's my honor to welcome Margo Edris. Margo, thank you for agreeing to join us and sharing your expertise. Can you tell our audience a little bit about yourself, which organization you work for, what you do, and the type of salespeople you lead? And I want to add that Margo is a rising star. In fact, I think she's just a star, period, but right, we can add rising to it. Margo, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Stephen and Colleen. I certainly appreciate the opportunity. My name is Margo Edris, and I work as the Regional Vice President of Sales at Salesforce. So I get the pleasure of leading a team of accomplished sales professionals who partner with state governments across the Rocky Mountain region to modernize government services. I also belong to an organization called Chief. It's actually a community of more than 20,000 executive women across the US and UK who are on a mission to advance women's leadership opportunities. I graduated from the University of Arizona with a degree in communications and business administration, and I live in Phoenix, Arizona with my husband, 2 dogs, and 3 kids.
We need to have an S for you. A superwoman is what I would call this. And we're going to learn more about what makes up superwoman here. But, one of our favorite questions, I guess you'd call it our signature question, Margo, is as a leader, was there an awakening moment when you had this aha that, you know what, my current approach isn't working. Maybe there's another approach. It might have been 1 moment, 3 moments, but can you share that with our audience today?
Yes, absolutely. So as a newer manager and leader of a sales team, I actually had a pivotal awakening moment when I was early on into taking over the team of being peers with many sales professionals on my team that I was then managing. We were on a call and I wanted to roll out some new ideas, processes, procedures that hadn't been done in the past. And I actually had someone on the meeting call me out and say, "We're not going to do this. That is a terrible idea. We're not doing this. It's way too much. It's a no for us." So I took a deep breath. It was a video call. I did turn red on the video and move on to the next subject and said, "I will address this after the call." So after that, I actually reached out to one of my mentors who previously managed the team, and he had spoken to that individual on my behalf. The person then apologized to me for the comment, the disrespect. But I do feel like even in that moment, the difficulty of the moment really caused this reaction from the rest of the team to see where I was coming from and almost protect me from anything that I would go through as managing their team, because I held my ground and kept my cool in that moment with grace and positivity. I would say the awakening moment really just happened by experiencing that, but then how I recovered and overcame it, and then also reconsidered the approach in which I rolled out future new processes, bring it out and put people into something new right away. You have to ask questions, you have to take feedback, you have to do it in a way that's more of an art than a science.
That's a great learning.
So, Margo, I'm curious because obviously you were able to remain calm and composed. Now, maybe the flushing, that's physiology 101. I am curious, is that something you were taught or did you learn that? Did you have parents that said, remain calm under pressure or something like that? Or where did you learn that?
Yeah, that's a really good point. I definitely feel like I learned a lot of resiliency just growing up. My parents were both in sales careers, so I did see a lot of ups and downs, a lot of highs and lows, a lot of just that perseverance, no matter what, to get through whatever the obstacle was. So I think that's where it stemmed from.
I think it's a really great story to share. Any thoughts now that you've had a lot more experience and probably encountered different issues, how you might handle that going forward?
Absolutely. So before I point out something new, what I typically do now is I have my best and brightest team members that are really closest to me on the team. And often I'll bounce ideas off of those very senior sales professionals that are proven, that have great relationships on the team, and ask a question to them. How do you think this will go over if I roll this out? Or how do you think this person will respond if I put this in place? And often they give me the advice that I need to either feel confident to do it on my own, or they'll now get to the point where they'll volunteer to take that on for me. Or this person is close with me and they shared this, so I'll just take that on. Don't worry about it, right? So that is the dream, that I have that loyalty and I've created that kind of reciprocal relationship, right? They definitely rely on me for certain things, but if they can take things off my plate and better the team and work towards a common goal, they'll gladly do that, which is really a great place to be.
That's a great answer, by the way, because I teach managers to do the same thing of getting people on board. Part of it is what I call the pre-sell, of getting your leaders to help sell what you're doing. So kudos, that's great learning. And we learn a lot during our first roles as sales managers, but you've had a lot of success. And one of the reasons I believe is, one, you're very smart and you pick up quickly, but your philosophy and approach to being prepared for coaching conversations. Can you share a little bit of that with the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely feel like I get better throughout experiences and really just trial and error in different scenarios and walking into it. But I do spend a lot of time in preparing for meetings or conversations that I'm about to have. And I feel like that helps the outcome get to a place that's beneficial for all. I also have all my sales leaders underneath me within my organization also do that with their respective teams. If they have a big customer meeting, let's do a dry run. What is the demo going to look like? What slides are we going to present? And put it back on the broader team to who's going to be responsible for what, but preparing for that in advance, which is key.
That's fantastic. In most cases, preparation is the key to success.
Margo, what would you say to a sales leader? Because all of us have probably heard this, whether it's from a sales rep or we've heard it from sales leaders. I don't have time to prepare for coaching calls. You're really busy. How do you make the time? How do you find the time?
Well, I've always been very, very adamant about my calendar and what I spend time doing. I really like to work backwards, right? So I like to put everything on the calendar that's customer facing and then work backwards towards the date that is approaching for that customer interaction. I also have been a fan of really just putting 15-minute meetings on the calendar. I don't know who decided it has to be 30 minutes, but if you have a 30-minute customer meeting or an hour-long customer meeting, the preparation doesn't have to be 30 minutes or an hour. It could be 15 minutes just to run through the high-level agenda of what you're going to cover. I also like the utilization of the tools that we have access to. So at Salesforce, we acquired Slack. So we use Slack in a lot of our interactions. And we can communicate via Slack in preparation for something as well. Share some documents, maybe a slide deck where you can assign tasks and say, hey, these people will take on this part of the deck, but I've at least created a hollow framework to then put some of the other content in. So part of that preparation too is just someone initiating even the initial deck. It might not be all ready for prime time and for the customer interaction, but here's at least the deck to start inserting some of the content into.
Well, it sounds like you've got preparation down pat. So how do you coach your team to be like you?
That's also very humbling because in order to get into the role that I'm in at Salesforce, my leaders and sponsors and people that had advocated for me being in this role did have a lot of concerns about that, right? Typically, as the top producing salesperson,
right,
you have a method to the madness. You want everyone to do it your way. You're used to being the quarterback. And you go into a role that's more of a coach from the sidelines, cheering people on, encouraging when necessary. So for me, it's less about me and my success and the approach that worked for me, because really there is no other Margo Edris in the world. I am very unique. I take a unique approach to what I do. I'm overly positive. I insert humor and fun, anecdotes about my kids or whatever I'm passionate about in my work, but that doesn't work for everyone. So you have to just lead with your authentic self and bring the best version of yourself to every interaction in order to achieve that same success. Even if you're not as positive, maybe you're a little bit more brutally honest, and maybe you have a dry sense of humor and that is your thing. Maybe you don't have kids, but you have a dog or a cat that you're really passionate about and can talk about that for hours and connect with people on that level. Whatever it is, you have to find that thing and connect with others in a similar way in order to advance the same goal.
And you're touching on a good point here, because Salesforce is obviously metric driven. You got big goals. You're hiring and working with drivers. You are a driver. However, what I loved about our first meeting with you, you also are pretty good at hitting the fun quota. And I've always had a theory that we need to hit the sales quota and the fun quota. And I don't want to do the spoiler here, but what are some of the things you do to bring in fun?
Yeah, no problem. Yes, at Salesforce, we have very lofty goals. We have very big expectations from the customers that we have the privilege of serving. So with that being in mind, we can get very caught up in the hustle bustle of closing deals, preparing, and then moving on for the next one. So one thing I instilled in our team once I took it over was any deal that we closed, we would then come up with a theme song for that deal. So along with the win story, what happened to get the deal closed and all the people involved and all the teamwork and effort that it took in the months, sometimes years leading up to closing the deal, I also have the lead account executive choose a theme song for that deal. And what song was it that helped them channel their energy? Maybe they listened to it on repeat. It was just loud blasting in the car when they're driving home from the customer meeting, ready to close that deal. And then we all get to listen to it, the YouTube version or whichever one they can find.
So let me ask, did you do that when you were a salesperson?
So, you know what? I would definitely listen to a song and kind of manifest the energy of that song to get that deal in. That did work for me. My first job out of college, they did hire a lot of younger people early on in their career, and we would have a gong in our sales pit. So we would run up, hit the gong, and then we also would do a start dance. So like the first deal that we ever closed, we would get up and have to do a dance about that deal. So I did get some of the ideas from that. We were all in the office all the time. That's also where I learned some of those details, such as professionalism, when to show up at work. It was in the office every day. We would have our morning meetings starting at 8 a.m. in the office. So that was nearly 8 years before working remotely at Salesforce.
I hope people listening realize how important it is to get that fun, because people learn best when they're having fun. And you're rolling me back, over 20 years ago. So I was a regional manager, and we had a Southwest portion of the Southwest region. And they just naturally should be the number one region in the country. But I was managing the Midwest, and I was like, we are beating them this year. And so do you remember the movie City Slickers? And do you remember that? And there was that Curly. And so those guys, there was just one thing, everybody tracking me, and we beat them by $10,000. So fun will make you money. Absolutely.
Yeah. I will mention one other thing we did this past year. It was really just the first time, and we are planning to continue for years to come. We did our inaugural Rocky Mountain red carpet award ceremony. Oh. So this was virtual, the tux on the top and then basketball shorts on the bottom.
That's remote working at its best.
That's remote working. Bring your own beverage of choice. Our SE leader for the West actually was our MC. So he hosted, just like the Academy Awards, the opening kind of comedy skit and routine. Had a lot of IT jokes about the groove and what the team had accomplished. And then in the weeks prior, I sent out a survey about who should win the awards. So they were all peer voted on awards for the Executive of the Year, SE of the Year. But we also had some more kind of quantifiable, detailed awards, such as Running with the Bulls Award or the Champagne Award for the person with the most sparkling personality.
I love it.
They feel special. And I've actually hand delivered those awards as I've seen those different team members at conferences and meetings throughout this year.
Wow. I have a warning that I just want to share with you, Margo. I think two things are going to happen after the podcast comes out. Number one, you're probably going to get a lot of job offers. I love your approach to sales leadership. Number two, internally, there's going to be issues because everyone's going to want to work for you. I mean, oh my God, it's going to be like a disaster. I'm only teasing, but it's very refreshing to find sales leaders who have that effervescence, who get what they need to do, but also it's about the people and the excitement. I always love to get themes going because I think people resonate with that. It's exciting, it's fun, it's different. It takes away from the grind of working hard. So you have a seasoned team, right? And you came out as a peer, and it's challenging. I think Colleen probably has memories of that. I know I do. So what was your trick to keeping everybody highly motivated and focused? What we learn is that, our people probably brought a lot more experience, but we bring the je ne sais quoi, the stuff that you can't learn.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of that just comes down to listening and meeting people where they are.
Okay.
Understanding where they're coming from, and then framing it in a way where they feel like it's mutually beneficial for them to agree to whatever you're asking. So it's just like any customer interaction, to where the questions, the listening, even them speaking more than you, usually is the approach that wins over the hearts and minds of the team every single time. I also will say I am very consistent. I show up every day, even if I'm tired, something happened with the kids over the weekend, this or that, we have a deal going south, we have something happening. There's always an issue that I'm dealing with, but I really try to always show up consistently with that positive attitude, humbly leading and trying to help everyone be successful.
Wow. Well, Margo, thank you for sharing some really great insights.
I think I pick up things, and the consistency, everybody goes, oh, they're shaking their head. But what I've seen in my years of managing managers, I would call them a fair weather manager or an all weather manager. And the fair weather manager was good only until a storm came. And then I didn't have one problem, I had two problems, their attitude. The all weather manager is what you describe yourself as. I'm going to be consistent. There's storms happening personally, professionally, all the time. And I got to tell you, it's the all weather manager that I believe builds trust on teams, because if you study trust, consistency is a key foundation of trust. I hope people really heard that when you said it. You're a leader in the tech field, and often in tech, it can be a little bit more male dominated, and yet you've had a lot of success there. I know myself, I work in a lot of male dominated industries. From that perspective, what have you done to be successful there? Or would you say you've got maybe a superpower that's helping you do quite well in a male dominated business? And it's not bad that it's male dominated. It's just the way it is right now. And it is changing with the work that you're doing with IES and also Chief Network.
Yeah, I really love this subject because I've done a lot of research on males versus women in the workplace. I listen to a lot of different podcasts, read different books from everyone from Brené Brown to even Sarah Blakely, who is the CEO of Spanx. So she's also another very inspirational woman who actually was in a male-dominated manufacturing space.
Absolutely.
Before it became more female-dominated. There used to be men really just working in that retail space. So I would say I've become very keenly aware of the differences between males and females. And with that awareness, I've been really able to transform how I interact based on the audience. If I understand a woman communicates with a far bigger number of words than a man does, when I speak up on a call with 50 other people, the majority are men, I try to be very concise with my idea, with my answer, or with my question, and having that situational awareness so that my ideas are better perceived and received by the audience that I am presenting to. But I also think being a woman is a competitive differentiator because there are less of us. So don't try to hide that. I really like to emphasize it. Or if I did go shopping and I bought something for myself that I was excited about, maybe I'll mention that when the time is right, I might not know what sports teams are playing or who won, but I can insert some of those anecdotes about the team colors, little things like that just help bring some humor into the conversation.
So let me play devil's advocate here, because I'm going to guess someone listening might be saying this to themselves. Why should I have to adjust my communication style when meeting with men? What would be your answer?
It's the way the world works. It's how it is. And I would just say throughout my experience, that's how I've been able to advance, is recognizing the differences and not seeing it as an insecurity or something holding me back, but understanding and leaning into it as a competitive differentiator.
It's just like when we adapt to different personality styles. But I knew somebody out there might be going, well, that doesn't seem right. And growing up, and I think I shared this with you earlier, Margo, I grew up surrounded by 4 brothers. So my natural style sometimes is really direct. Too direct, succinct. So I just wanted to clarify that. I'm pretty sure there was going to be some question marks out there. So thank you.
I don't want to ask any more questions because I'm a male and I'm going to be more concise. Realizing I'm with 2 females, I want to ask Colleen for her opinion as to what is your best takeaway today from Margo.
I'm going to have 2. One is I really give Margo, I give you a lot of credit, Margo, that when you had that first encounter where somebody in the emotional intelligence world we'd call gave you an emotional zinger, that you were able to manage your emotions. I got to tell you, that would have been very easy to go into fight or flight. So the fact that you were able to remain calm and composed, but then the fact is this, you also didn't go into blame, excuse, victim. You said, okay, I'm going to call a mentor. What can I do? So I think that's a great learning point. And then the second, I love the fact that you're hitting the fun quota. I hope everybody listens twice to that part of the podcast and adopts some of the things you're doing. How about you, Stephen?
I forgot about the fun quota, but I love that. What I walked away with, Margo, which I think is important for all of us as a takeaway, and I wrote it down as you were saying it, but showing up every day as the best version of yourself on every interaction. That's not easy to do. We have all types of things. We're hungry, we're tired, we got something else. Our boss gave us a hard time or a customer gave us a hard time. But the ability to be self-conscious and self-aware to do that, I think is very powerful. There's lots of great things. Actually, it gets me excited to go back into sales leadership when I think about the music and the songs of someone hitting a success point or sending a note out. So kudos to you. I think it's just great that there's a refreshing approach. Male, female. I always thought females, okay, so nobody shoot me, we're far better at sales and sales leadership than males. I use the French word because I come from Quebec, but je ne sais quoi is those things that you can't teach, you can't learn. They're just things that people have. And I think, Margo, not that I'm trying to compliment you, but you've got that. As we wrap up another exciting and fun episode of the Sales Leadership Awakening podcast, Colleen and I both hope that you've gathered some cool strategies that Margo has shared to help close that gap between knowing what to do and actually doing it, because Margo is a great example of making it happen. So thank you.
Thanks, Margo.
Thank you.